My evolution as a composer at Western Oregon University began with the study of the Renaissance. To glean the most interesting aspects of Renaissance music, one must have at least a base understanding of the dynamics of the European Renaissance. Very briefly, let's touch upon three main ideas which will aid in the understanding of Renaissance music: humanism, the faltering of the Roman Catholic Church, and an understanding of modality versus tonality. Humanism, a movement inspired by Petrarch and other scholars of the Renaissance, in which culture, quote, turned away from medieval scholasticism and revived interest in ancient Greek and Roman thought. To this end, it was an era, quote, in which human learning and endeavor, freed from the constraints of an overly religious Middle Ages, became more focused on human achievement. The Renaissance, or rebirth, sought to achieve this through ushering in an age of exploration and invention, a return to reason, logic, and empiricism. Throughout the Renaissance, the Roman Catholic Church was in turmoil, consistently plagued with corruption and scandal. The Western Schism, or the Papal Schism, of 1378 through 1417, was a fracture within the church and regional rulers, which resulted in three different bishops claiming title to the papal throne. In the 16th century, multiple Protestant denominations, including Lutheranism and Calvinism, were formed in protest of the Roman Catholic Church. This was known as the Reformation. In the following years, the Catholic Church formed its own council to address abuses and reforms within the Church. This was known as the Counter-Reformation. As disillusionment with the Church grew throughout the Renaissance, secularism rose within the European populace. Avoiding an overly technical definition, the type of modal compositions we are working with are compositions which utilize modes. That is, scales made up of different combinations of whole steps and half steps. In our case, these compositions are written in a predominantly horizontal, linear fashion opposed to vertically stacked tertiary harmony. Much of the repertoire was created by building new melodies and compositions over pre-existing chant or plain song. Tonality, generally described as an arrangement of pitches and/or chords with direction and stability based on the triadic 1 or tonic chord. Let's end on this quote from Howard M. Brown and Louise K. Stein's Music in the Renaissance on harmonic progressions in the Renaissance. Quote, "Neither Lasso nor his contemporaries had a technical vocabulary capable of explaining in detail the way each chord within a mode relates to its tonic, and we have still not devised a completely satisfactory method of dealing with the tonal implications of modal music." Okay, so how do these events actually impact music of the era? 1. We must understand that a major employer of musicians of the Renaissance were the various churches. Composers, who are typically also instrumentalists, choir masters, or clergy, were responsible for writing music for weekly masses, yearly religious celebrations, and secular works for entertaining visiting dignitaries and the like. And 2, we must understand that part of this great divide within the church was in part, or in some sense, a battle over progressivism versus conservatism. Part of that conservatism is what kind of heathenistic, barbarous music do we allow during church services, and what stipulations do we put on those compositions? Through the use of intelligent counterpoint and a combination of polyphony and homophony, composers of the late Renaissance, such as Palestrina and Victoria, were able to compose heavenly, fluid music, which still allowed the words of the religious text to be clearly understood, one of the many concerns voiced by heads of church at the Council of Trent, the council formed during the Counter-Reformation. My work entitled Flos Florum for four voices is a model composition imitating the motets of Thomas Louis de Victoria and other composers of the High Renaissance. I chose the motet, described as a polyphonic choral composition based on either a sacred or secular text, simply because I wanted to compose for a chamber choir rather than a 200-piece concert choir. If I had, I may have composed a mass or a requiem. Before you begin composing, find a text which inspires you. This could be part of the Mass Ordinary, a psalm, a multitude of Catholic writings by clerics such as Hildegard of Bingen, or really any text at all you want to work with. The chosen text, either secular or sacred, will provide guidance in terms of tone, phrase structure, and overall form. In my case, Flos Florum was a text I discovered while researching Guillaume Dufay. This text is in 5 stanzas. The form is A, B, 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 and that is how I approached it. My aim was for each stanza to have its own character while utilizing themes and ideas from previous stanzas. In my experience, the hardest thing about composing is the first measure. So I studied the motets of Victoria and looked for patterns. What I found was this scenario here, where one voice enters, a second voice enters a fifth below, then the rest of the voices either follow suit in imitative counterpoint or begin to flesh out the harmony. Once the voices have entered, what do you do with them? The answer is typically imitation, something we will be seeing a lot of today. You can see imitation here, here, and here. Text painting, which really just means having the music descriptively mirroring what is happening in the text, can be used to highlight or accentuate portions of the text. It can also provide guidance as to where to take the melody or phrase. In Flos Florum, you can see here in the portion of the text regarding Regina, the melody ascends in pitch, symbolizing majesty and wonder. This one sentiment allows for logical direction of the melodic line, which in turn will trigger imitation throughout the other voices, as well as creating the harmonic outline to be filled in by the other voices. So why would one waste hours and hours of their life composing seemingly archaic neo-Renaissance music? One, because it frustrated me not being able to write music which sounded like it was composed in the 16th century. In this medium, it is easy for one's compositions to come off sounding like voice leading exercises, a chorale, which sound more Baroque or classical in nature. For example, it really took me 3 tries to perfect this compositional style. My first attempt was a model composition in the style of Dufay. My second was a work for soprano and viol quartet, inspired by William Byrd and English composers of the 16th century. And lastly, the piece we will be hearing today, Flos Florum for 4 voices, composed in fall of 2022. Though these pieces are quite different and span a difference of over 200 years, they all share one thing in common, which is that they are all written in a linear style using modal counterpoint and not the established tonal musical idioms which are solidified in the Baroque. And 2, this is actually a very marketable skill for a composer looking to score for film, series, or video games. Pop culture always has an appetite for period pieces. Whether it be traditional instrumentation or simply modal, esoteric influenced sound design, early music influences can be found in any number of films and video games.